Please welcome Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at American Airlines, Maya Leibman, in conversation with Skift Airline Weekly Editor, Madhu Unnikrishnan.
Good morning, Maya. Thank you for joining us today at the Skift Global Forum.
Good morning, Madhu. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to just start this by just observing that people may not know this, but airlines not just use technology, but are actually, in the business, they are technology companies, right? I mean, you oversee a department of 3,000 people, which in the San Francisco where I live would be a fairly sizable tech firm on its own. So technology is kind of foundational for airlines. It's not just something you use, but it's something that you have to, that's actually an integral part to the company, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There is what I often tell my team when I'm conveying how important it is what they do. What I say is there is literally no business process that happens at the airline on a daily basis that doesn't involve technology in some way. And the other example I use is that if we got 100 people together and we asked them, 100 of our employees together, and we asked them to come up with an idea to make things better at the airline, 99 of them would involve technology in some way. So the way you've described it is exactly right.
Well, let's stop right there. We'll talk about how technology has sort of met this moment and how you've been using technology to meet this moment. But it's trite now to say that this is an unprecedented period for the world, obviously, but also for the airline industry. It's an industry that has been brought to its knees very quickly after a decade of roaring success. So I kind of want to separate this conversation into what I call the before times and the now. And to start with sort of the end of the before time, so February or March, when it started to become apparent that this pandemic was going to have a profound effect on the airline industry, how did you start to leverage technology to sort of accommodate passengers and to just basically run your business in a world that changed hour by hour?
You mean right before the pandemic?
Just as the pandemic was
happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say, if we go back even further, I've been with American for close to 25 years. And so I've been through 9/11, I've been through the financial crisis, I've been through our restructuring and through the merger with US Airways and the MAX grounding. And I can say with certainty that this one takes the cake in terms of crises. And I think if you look back sort of in the February, March timeframe, the really fascinating thing is that none of our systems, none of our processes, none of the way that this airline is built was designed to not fly planes. Everything is built in order to keep this giant machine running. And when the machine basically came to a near halt, we had to essentially rethink a lot of our technology, a lot of our processes, a lot of the ways that we interacted with our customers in order to facilitate this, this just crazy event that was happening.
Well, can you give us a specific example? I mean, so let's just pick a, sort of period in mid to late March when people were hundreds, thousands of passengers were canceling flights and flights were being grounded. And what did you use? Like, how did you notify people?
Yeah, no, it was very intense because, while we have systems that deal with flight cancellations, they help accommodate customers or they repair our crews, they work in best circumstances, for a couple hundred cancellations. But when you're canceling thousands of flights, we had to build technology around the technology in order to facilitate that. But it also really accelerated a lot of our efforts. So for example, for our customers, we had to make it easy to cancel a flight. We had to make it easy to get a refund. We had to make it easy to get a voucher if that's what the customer wanted. If they had a voucher, we had to make it easy for the customer to see how much value they had in that voucher. We had to build an electronic wallet on our website and on our mobile app so they could see that. And then we had to make it easy for them to then go spend that money with us once they knew what they had. And so these were all efforts that pre-pandemic were somewhere on the priority list, but probably would have never made it to the top because it just wasn't an issue. We weren't canceling that many flights, but sort of March, April timeframe, we realized, hey, this is completely different. We need to accelerate these efforts here.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the canceling thousands of flights and what you built around the existing. I mean, you had to do that on the fly. How were you managing that? Like, was there technology for the technology, right? I mean, how were you managing notifying tens of thousands of passengers and grounding flights? And also, may not be something that our audience thinks about, but you've got crews scattered on 5 continents, and that have to be accommodated and moved and rescheduled and hoteled. What did you do? Like, when your senior management team got together and said, we have to do this, what were the technology solutions you used to do all of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, it was an interesting experience, and it's a great question because it required fundamentally rethinking how we did things. So we have technology to handle cancellations, but for example, for our crews, when there's a really big weather event, let's say, and we have to cancel several hundred flights in a given day, we have technology that will look out probably 2 or 3 days and say, okay, what are the downline ramifications of all of those cancellations so that we can get the crews repaired and back on their correct sequence. But now, as we looked forward, we realized, look, the only thing that we're certain of is that there's going to be a lot of uncertainty going forward. And so we essentially rebuilt that technology to expand the window of time in which we could optimize for all the downline implications to something more like 10 days. So that we could make the job easier for our crew schedulers and our crew planners and for our crews themselves to handle what was happening.
Now, was there anything, you mentioned the Boeing 737 MAX and the grounding of that from March of last year. Was that instructive? Was that experience instructive to handle this crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got a lot of practice with canceling flights during the MAX grounding, and especially because it was another experience where there was a lot of uncertainty. We kept thinking, the MAXs are going to come back next month, or they're going to come back the next month. And so we would try to keep the schedule in place for as long as we could, but we needed to cancel it in enough time to give our crews some certainty and our customers some certainty. So we got very good at doing that, and that was really helpful for this experience. But again, nothing, even the MAX issue pales in comparison to the number of cancellations we were doing in March and April of this year.
Wow. Can you give us a rough number of how many cancellations you were doing, say, in March and April?
Oh, it was like in the thousands easily, for that entire time period, tens of thousands probably.
Wow. Well, let's switch to the now. I understand you have some news to make today, news to announce today. You released a new version of your app, and I wanted to ask that was this project accelerated by the customer service needs and technology needs of the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. There's no question that mobile has always been an important part of the customer journey, but it is only going to grow in importance and reliance as we go forward. So that, coupled with the focus on having a clean and safe and touchless experience when our customers are traveling, that also will only grow in importance. I think even post-pandemic, customers will continue to expect a really clean and safe experience when they travel. So what we did, I'll start first with this summer. What we did was our customers, everyone can check in a touchless way for a flight. You just check in on AA.com or on our mobile app and get your boarding pass that way. And there's one exception, and that is when our customers are checking a bag. And in those cases, when they go to the airport, we ask them to interact with the kiosk in order to drive their bag tag. Right. So for that group, what we developed this summer was the ability to scan your boarding pass when you get to the kiosk in order to drive the bag tag. So you don't have to touch the kiosk. You don't have to interact with it in that way. And that was great. What we released this week is sort of taking that to the next level, because I said, everyone can have a touchless experience unless they're checking bag. The fact is, you can only have that touchless experience if you have our app downloaded on your phone, but a lot of people don't.
Mhm.
And so for those people, when they arrive at the airport and they're going to interact with the kiosk, we wanted to give them a touchless experience too. So now we're just testing this right now in DFW. We have a QR code on the kiosk. So when you walk up to it, you use your phone, your camera, you'll scan the QR code. It will essentially open on your phone like a version of the app, an applet, which is now enabled as a result of the latest release of the iPhone that happened last week. And they can just use that to check in. And they now no longer need to touch the kiosk. So yet another level of touchless kiosk that we have enabled.
Interesting. So if I get this straight, even if you don't have the app, you can scan a QR code, QR code, excuse me, and you do not need to interact with the kiosk to drop your bag. That's okay. So that was a technology solution that that was accelerated by the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. And right now what we're testing is the ability to just check in for your flight with the applet. We will extend that to driving bag tags soon as well.
Oh, all right. So what are some of the other technologies that you've been working on, or projects that you've been working on, that besides the app that were accelerated by the needs of this pandemic?
There are a number of them. Again, sort of continuing with that theme of a touchless experience, we have been working a lot on biometrics and facial recognition because that's a great way to really smooth all of the processes. We've allowed our international customers, when they're boarding the flight, to use facial recognition technology for the boarding. And just recently, we've launched a pilot, a test essentially at DFW, to allow our international customers, when they are checking a bag, to be able to do that through facial recognition rather than by pulling out their ID. So that's one example. Another is we've launched a chat feature on our mobile app that allows, essentially chat functionality, because during this process, we needed to provide, customers have a lot of questions, and we needed to provide another means for them to interact with us. Another example, and this wasn't just accelerated by the pandemic, this was essentially invented because of the pandemic, is, one of the biggest questions our customers have is, if I travel somewhere, what are the implications? What are the restrictions when I get there? Is there a quarantine? What's going to be open? What are all the travel regulations? And as a result, we have put on our website the ability to basically just enter your destination and get all of that information, because it's so confusing. I mean, there's so much information everywhere, and it's so unclear how to get it. We've now put it all in one place, and you can get that on our website.
Who updates that? I'm curious.
Who what?
Who updates that?
I know. That's great. We provide, it's a service that's provided to us. But yes, it must be a head-hurting experience for the people that have to keep that updated.
I can imagine. All right, in the time that we have left, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about technology, and just switch gears and talk a little bit about sort of the moment this country is in terms of racial and gender justice and social justice issues. Airlines have an excellent track record with technology, women in technology. I think 4 of the 5 top chief technology officers or chief information officers in North America are women.
Yes.
But that's not typical of technology, the tech industry in general, writ large. I wanted to ask you sort of what are some of the things your team and American are doing to bring more women into technology and to sort of to bring more underrepresented groups into the industry?
Yeah, there are a few things. Let's start sort of with recent graduates. So just bringing in people who are ready to enter the workforce. We have programs that are specifically focused on bringing in diverse representation. This year, we hired 15 individuals, about 15 from hackathons that we went to, that we sponsored for HBCU graduates. And as a result, June came along. We'd made the offers last year. June came along. It was during the pandemic, and we thought, do we still want to do this? What kind of experience will that be? And we realized that even absent COVID, we can't take our eye off the ball when it comes to creating a diverse pipeline of future talent for the organization and building an organization of equity and inclusion. So we went ahead, and I was really proud that we honored those offers where a lot of other companies might have rescinded offers to the graduates that were starting, that had just graduated in May and starting in June. But I think you have to go back even earlier than that. One of the things that we're doing here in Dallas is working with the local school district, DISD, and an early collegiate program that they're doing with local community colleges where, and in partnership with American, where seniors can graduate both with their high school diploma and with a 2-year associate's degree so that they're more prepared for the workforce. And we're sponsoring the technology tracks of that. And the program is 60% women and nearly 100% Hispanic. And we're excited about that. But the fact is you have to go back even earlier because especially girls get to a point probably around, the tween years where for some reason technology is sort of classified as a boy thing. Right. And they kind of lose interest and they kind of opt out of it. And so we have a program that we work with girls in sort of those middle school years. And we go to the schools and we teach them about technology. We teach them, we incorporate technology into sort of what they're doing into life lessons and really try to retain their interest so that we can grow them into the people that ultimately we're going to hire later on.
Huh. And I understand Americans been doing work with the historically Black colleges and universities as well in beefing up that pipeline of underrepresented groups.
Right. Those are the folks that we, in these hacks that we have sponsored through organizations like Black Enterprise or Afrotech, through those sources, we have found a lot of these graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. And those were the 15 people that we just brought on in June.
Great. And what, so do you see the problem then as not just, as you said, like you have to work earlier to make STEM education more attractive for younger girls and tween girls, and how are you sort of increasing represent? I mean, is there a gap? Is I guess the question I'm asking. If you're working with sort of younger girls and tween girls, where how many years before that talent pipeline starts to flow into American and other technology companies?
The fact is you have to be intentional from the very start, going back to the earliest stages when kids are starting to learn coding or starting to learn programming, get them excited about that. And I think throughout you got to be intentional every step of the way about growing your, diverse and female population. For girls that I talk a lot about what a great career technology is. Number one, it provides an enormous amount of flexibility. And two, it calls on a lot of characteristics like patience and collaboration, things that girls are traditionally really good at and also really enjoy. And so really just try to inspire them and get them excited about careers in STEM because we need women, we need diverse team members to create the technology that will ultimately serve women and serve diverse individuals.
Right. Well, we have a question from the audience that I'd like to take, which is slightly off this topic, but I think it's one worth asking. One thing I've learned less from airlines is how safe it is to travel with younger families. How can tech help in that?
That's a really interesting question. I don't think we have drawn a distinction between safety for everyone and safety specifically for young families. I took my young son on a trip this summer. And I think anyone, regardless of age, once you get on board, you see how clean the planes are. You see that people are wearing masks. You see that people are socially distancing in the airport. And you realize that, hey, I actually feel pretty safe. Once you've done it once, or once you hear about your friends who've done it, suddenly it becomes something that becomes a little bit more natural. I don't know. I have to think a little bit about how technology could assist with that.
All right, we have an audience question here. Just really quickly, how happy is American Airlines with its overall tech stack? Do you anticipate any significant overhauls of any parts of it once you exit the pandemic?
Yeah, we were probably going as a result of the pandemic, but it was a journey we were on before anyhow, probably more reliance on open source as we come out of the pandemic. But probably more than the tech stack itself is a real focus on how we work. My belief is that there's no single sustainable competitive advantage in the airline industry. If one airline has a great idea, it's going to get copied. Right. I think you can achieve a competitive advantage, not in what you do, but in how you do it. And at American, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we up our maturity in the ways of working, whether it's Agile or DevOps, a product orientation, a product mindset, our journey to the cloud. All of those things are focuses for us in terms of how we work, maybe not maybe over the tech stack itself.
Great. We're out of time, Maya, and I wanted to thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we can do this in person at the next forum.
Yeah, I would enjoy that. Thank you so much, Madhu.
Thank you. Goodbye.